The internet is a crucial part of our daily lives. For us younger generations, it always has been, it always will be, but especially today, with the virus keeping everyone contained inside their houses, it has become a vital part of staying in contact with our friends or continue our education through online classes. And this is why I believe that it should not be controlled by a handful of giant corporations who are no longer kept in check. When I was a sophomore in high school, I wrote a paper about net neutrality and why it should continue to be a thing, why it is so important, and why it should be strengthened by the Federal Communications Committee, or the FCC. And a few months after I wrote that paper, the FCC repealed net neutrality and got rid of their control over internet service providers. And this was a terrible idea, I think, in my opinion, and that is why I'm here today to talk to you about it. In this speech, I'll be covering a few main points, such as what is or what was net neutrality, what corporations can do now that it is no longer a thing, and finally, what we can do to fix this and what we can do to reinstate net neutrality. So net neutrality is the idea that the internet should be available to everyone, and everything on the internet should be available for anyone who wishes to view it without the internet service provider that they have controlling what they can and cannot see. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 allowed anyone to enter the communications business and compete in any market. This promoted competition between the smaller businesses who wanted to make a name for themselves and the larger businesses who already had themselves established. What the Communications Act of 1996 did was it prevented internet service providers from favoring one company over another based on how much money that they would provide. This act put internet service providers under Title II of the Communications Act, which labeled them as common carriers, which treated them like any other utility such as electricity, meaning that they had to provide equal internet access to all of their users without any bias. When the FCC repealed Title II and revoked the internet service providers' title as common carriers, it allowed the internet service providers to sort of exploit these companies and do some shady things that were now considered legal. One of those things is called throttling. What throttling is when an internet service provider limits the speed of the internet which a company or a website receives based on how much they pay that internet service provider for their access. This forces large companies to pay massive amounts of money for reliable internet, while suffocating smaller companies who cannot afford the same internet quality, effectively making customers, forcing customers to leave the smaller company with poor internet connection for the larger company who is paying way too much money for a usable internet. And this is called paid peering. It is when a company pays an internet service provider for more direct and faster access to their internet. Another thing that these internet service providers do is they created what is called a natural monopoly of coverage. You can see this if you go to the FCC's website and look at their internet service provider map. If you type in your area code or your zip code, it'll show you which internet service providers are available in your area. I typed in my own, and there were 3 companies that could provide me internet. The third company was HughesNet, which could provide me 2.5 megabytes per second internet speed. The second was Viasat, which allowed 10 megabytes per second, and the number 1 company in my area was Charter or Spectrum. They are both owned by the same company, and they could provide me with 90 megabytes per second. So I'll let you guess which company I have providing me internet. Of course, it is Charter, which is 9 times faster than the second most available internet in my area. And The same goes for, I'm sure, quite a few of you, since about a third of you said that you also had Charter or Spectrum as your internet provider. And that goes as well for most of Americans. Most Americans, about 30%, only have one viable option for their internet speed, which sounds like a monopoly to me, which is just not right. Their monopolies should not be a thing, yet these internet service providers get away with it since they no longer have the FCC and net neutrality keeping them in check. And so what can we do about this? What can we do to get rid of these monopolies that the internet service providers have created legally? Well, it's voting. The FCC is a government-controlled district. The way you change government is through voting. And so what we need to do, my solution for this, is voting for your representative or contacting your current representative and telling them to focus on net neutrality and focusing on internet freedom in general. That is the way that we can solve this issue. That is one of the major ways, if not the only way that we can solve this issue, is voting for representatives who will bring this issue to Congress and hopefully pass a bill. Thank you for listening to me. My name is Elijah Bliske. I hope that I have convinced you to think more about the internet when voting in this upcoming election or following elections.